we talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
Now, back to the After Practice Podcast with Lake Lewis.
Welcome to the After Practice Podcast with myself, Lake Lewis. Greatly appreciate you joining me as always. Got a great podcast for you today, folks. We're going to be breaking down the top 10 selections in this year's 2024 NFL Draft. And these are my predictions for where I think teams are going to go as far as the top 10. And I do have a team trading up into the top 10, so we'll talk about that shortly. And I'll be at the draft next week. I'll be in Detroit. Really looking forward to that. I'll be able to do some, live hits. Was just notified of that with my good friend and anchor over at ABC Television in Washington, D.C., Natalie Spalla. So you'll be able to see us on there. And it should be a good time. I mean, it should be a lot of fun to see what some of these teams are going to do as far as this year's draft. And I think this year is a little different from the previous drafts that I've covered. And that's because I know some teams draft for need, some teams draft best player on the board. But I think this year's teams and where they stack up and as far as where their draft order is, there's some specific players that I really feel like could help these teams immediately. And obviously their first round draft picks, they're supposed to be on the field. That's how talented these young men are. But I think specifically this year is a little different because, like I said, some of these guys can come in and be difference makers from day one for these teams. So we'll talk about that. We'll break down who those 10 players are. And I'm pretty confident that my picks are going to hold true next week on Thursday, and we'll see how that plays itself out. But before we get into it, if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me very easily. All you have to do is go to @LakeLewisJr. or @LakeLewisJR. That's how you'll see it on X, formerly known as Twitter, on Instagram, as well as Facebook. So once again, @LakeLewisJr. If you want to subscribe to this podcast, and we appreciate everybody out there for, joining us and taking time out of your day or your evening or however you're watching this. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, there's several ways you can do so. If you're a person that likes to listen to, podcasts in audio form, all you have to do is go to Apple or Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Deezer, you name it, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. The podcast is on there. So once again, all you have to do is look up the After Practice Podcast with Lake Lewis on there. And then if you'd like to watch this right now, if you're watching this, what's up? Appreciate you joining. All you have to do is go to sportsjourney.com or YouTube. And on the YouTube, it's under the Sports Journey channel. So once again, on YouTube, you go to the Sports Journey channel, subscribe that way. And then, of course, you can go to sportsjourney.com and watch it. And speaking of Sports Journey, there's a lot of great content on sportsjourney.com. Once again, you can go to there for more Commanders insight, NFL coverage, as well as NHL, and briefly some NBA stuff on there. I know the playoffs are starting in the NBA right now, but it's not about that right now. It's about the NFL draft, the 2024 NFL draft. Before we talk about that real quick, just got to plug a couple sponsors. And of course, this podcast is presented by Thermopack. And once again, Thermopack is an innovative mouth guard that changes colors based on your temperature. So if you're a high impact, a high performing athlete and you wear a mouth guard, I highly encourage you to wear this thing because it will tell you your body heat based on the color of the mouth guard. And it's something that can help people. Unfortunately, we deal with heat strokes in athletics a lot of times when it's super hot outside. So this thing is something that hopefully will help, deter something like that from happening. And it's also got a technology in it as well that's kind of like the shock in a Nike shoe, and it will help prevent concussion. So I'm not saying it's 100% safe, that it's going to definitely not prevent those things, but it's better than not wearing one. And I definitely think that this is an innovative mouth guard, and Dr. George Garbus is doing a great job with that. So I encourage you to check them out at thermopack.com. And then, of course, my good friends over at Sideline Prep. Sideline Prep if you're trying to become a professional cheerleader, Sideline Prep has all the proven methods to get you on board a potential NBA team, NFL team. They do great work. They help young ladies and men as well who like to become professional cheerleaders, from your nutrition, your diet plan, just everything. It's a lot of really good coaching that you will receive from them. So for more information with them, you can go to sidelineprep.com. And then, of course, the fun one, Chill Skins. Chill Skins is an innovative towel, cooling towel. And I've used it before many times. I use it all the time on my daily workouts. And as well, I use it at training camp when it's super hot outside on those NFL fields. So with this towel, all you have to do is wet it and it'll actually cool up really well. And I mean, I gave it to a lot of my colleagues last year at Commanders Park, and they were wearing it around the field. So it definitely is effective and it works and it will keep you cool. So once again, you can go to chillskins.com, or if you go to sportsjourney.com, we actually have a promo code on there. And if you use that, you get like a 20% discount on any of your orders. So you can check them out there. All right, let's get down to the business at hand. And that is the top 10 selections in this year's 2024 NFL draft. And I put together a pretty solid list that I'm pretty confident in. And I thought of all the team needs for each team. Obviously, were they going to go best player on the board or were they going to go need? And I think these players are both. They're the best player on the board for those teams, and they're going to fill a tremendous need, a hole, a void that these teams have. And it starts at number one with the Chicago Bears. They're on the clock. To me, the Bears, it's a no-brainer. I think everyone and their mom knows who the Bears are going to take, and that's going to be USC quarterback Caleb Williams. I think he is, a guy that for the last 3 years, people have been talking about. This could be a generational type talent. He has every tool in the shed, literally. Anything that you want from this guy, he can do. He can run, he can throw. He's smart. He has an uncanny ability to extend plays. Everything you want is there. He can throw the intermediate route. He can throw the deep ball. And I think last year people were just looking at his numbers based on, the year before that when he won the Heisman Trophy for USC. And he didn't have the same type of numbers. He didn't have the same type of talent around him either. And I think that if you think of what he's going to be walking into in Chicago, they've done some things to kind of make life a lot easier for Caleb Williams. I mean, in free agency, they picked up Keenan Allen, who, in my opinion, is a Hall of Fame wide receiver when he laces him up, when he retires. So I think that that's a big move for them to get him another weapon to go along with DJ Moore. You have Cole Kmet, your tight end, who's a really good tight end as well. I like what the Chicago Bears have done. Maybe they need to shore up some things on their offensive line. Their offensive line isn't bad. It can be a little better. But I think Caleb Williams will be coming into a better situation than most number one quarterbacks who were taken in the draft. So at number one, the Chicago Bears take Caleb Williams. And this is where I think the draft starts, folks, for everybody. And that's at number two. And that's with the Washington Commanders. Everyone knows Caleb Williams was going number one, but now people aren't sure what the Commanders are going to do. Well, for me, I think that they're going to go quarterback. And we heard Adam Peters tell us in the media the other day that they're pretty much not moving out of number two. They feel pretty good at number two, and he doesn't see them moving out of that position, and I don't either. I think Washington needs a franchise quarterback, and this is the draft that you can get one at number two in your draft slot. So for me, I think the Washington Commanders are going to go with Jaden Daniels. I know there was some talk as far as his agent not liking the fact that Washington did kind of like their player interview process with all of them, kind of together in a setting, but they did have one-on-one interviews with guys. So I just want you guys to know that. So they did meet with position guys by themselves. So it wasn't collectively. They just went out together as a unit. So with that said, listen, there's nothing in my mind that deters Washington from taking Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels was last year's Heisman Trophy winner from LSU. And if you look at everything that this kid can do, he can throw the football, but he can also kill you with his legs. And if you look at some of his better games last year against the Floridas, against the Alabamas, you saw the dual threat that he is. And I think if you're Washington, naturally you're going to think of RG3, Robert Griffin III, who in 2012 came in and was the NFL Rookie of the Year. And then we remember the injury. and everything after that, and just where the franchise has gone since, which has pretty much been downhill. Well, I think a quarterback like Jaden Daniels can get the fan base excited. Even for the naysayers, they're going to tune in to see if he fails, So I think it's a good move for Washington to shore up a position of need, something that the franchise desperately needs. And the new ownership with Josh Harris, you need a person that you can market and sell to the fans, and hopefully that player produces on the field. So for me, at number 2, I'm taking Jaden Daniels. Moving along at number 3, and now it's the New England Patriots on the board, and they're in a position too where I think that they're going to be looking for a quarterback for the future. And right now, it doesn't have to happen overnight. And see, that's the difference between Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. I think they come in and they hit the ground running, and they're the opening day starters for the Bears and for the Commanders. But I think for the Patriots, I think they're going to draft Drake May, quarterback out of North Carolina, who's got so much upside. It's unbelievable. He definitely is a franchise talent. And I think for New England, because they went out and they brought back Jacoby Brissett, who was in Washington last year as a backup and had some success when he got in some games behind Sam Howell. Jacoby Brissett, remember, was in New England for several years, so he knows the landscape up there. And with Gerard Mayo now being the coach, he's very familiar with Jacoby Brissett. So I think Jacoby Brissett starts, maybe the first month or so. But if the Patriots aren't doing much, then maybe you can get Drake May on the field at some point. But I think Drake May is the safe bet to be the New England Patriots quarterback with the number 3 pick. Now, this is where I think it gets interesting, because at number 4, the Arizona Cardinals are on the board, and they don't need a quarterback because they have Kyler Murray. Well, normally when you already have your franchise quarterback and you have other needs, and I think for them it's a need of a wide receiver, and there's 3 sitting right there that are all top 10 caliber wide receivers, you can trade out of that spot. And that's exactly what I'm doing in this mock draft, because it's mine. I'm trading out of that spot at number 4 if I'm the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm trading with the Minnesota Vikings. That's right. The Vikings have 2 first-round draft picks this year. They have the 11th pick and they have the 23rd pick. So if I'm the Minnesota Vikings and I'm Kevin O'Connell, who was in Washington for a while, that's my guy, I'm actually reaching out to the Cardinals and I'm trading up. So for this draft, this mock draft top 10, I'm trading up. I'm Minnesota moving into the 4th spot, where now they select J.J. McCarthy, quarterback out of Michigan. I think J.J. McCarthy is another guy. I was at the Combine in Indy a couple weeks back, and I actually was tweeting out that J.J. McCarthy was wowing me with his drills and what he was doing. I didn't know he had the arm strength that he had. I didn't know that he had the touch and the finesse that he could put on the ball. He did everything that they asked him to do at the Combines in Indy. And I think that it really showed a lot of people that maybe he had all these tricks in the bag. He just wasn't asked to do it by Jim Harbaugh because they were a run-centric, defensive-oriented team. And it worked because Michigan won the national championship last year. But I think when you look at some of the times where J.J. McCarthy had to go off script and make plays, he did. He made plays with his legs. He had throws in tight windows. So he showed you that he could do it. We just hadn't seen it consistently. And I think he is a franchise caliber talent, but he may need some more time, just like a Drake May. So if I'm Kevin O'Connell, I'm going into this year with Sam Darnold, who, they signed from San Francisco. He was there for 1 year. Before that, we know he was one of the top picks several seasons ago for the New York Jets. So Sam Darnold starts out the season for the Vikings, and then ultimately maybe J.J. McCarthy at some point, if it's not this year, next year, gets an opportunity to be the quarterback of the future for the Minnesota Vikings. All right, so now at number 5, speaking of Michigan, Jim Harbaugh. He's now the coach of the LA Chargers, back in the NFL after a brief run with the 49ers years ago. Took that team to the NFC Championship game, and had an opportunity at some point to, win a Super Bowl. I think they lost to the Ravens as well in the Super Bowl. So he's had success at the pro level. Then, of course, he went to Michigan, and this year they won the national championship. So he's now running the show for the Chargers. And they have a great young quarterback in Justin Herbert, one of the best in the league. But Justin Herbert's going to need some weapons because let's face it, Keenan Allen, I mentioned earlier, is in Chicago. Now he's gone, and you think of their other starting receiver, Williams. He's now in New York with Aaron Rodgers. So if you're the Chargers, you have to look at your wide receiving core. And I think they have the kid Palmer comes back as well as Quentin Johnson that they selected from TCU a year ago. Both those guys had 38 catches last year. So not sure if you have a number one receiver there. So if you are, the Los Angeles Chargers, you've got to give Justin Herbert some more weapons. And why not do it with the best receiver in the draft? And it's not by a landslide because I do like the other receiver that I'm going to talk about shortly after this. But I think if you're the Chargers, you take Marvin Harrison, wide receiver out of Ohio State. This guy's a legacy player. His dad's a Hall of Famer, and Marvin Harrison. So, Marvin Harrison Jr. is a guy that I'm telling you gets it done. I mean, he's a productive player. Anything you need from him, he runs every route on the tree, catches everything near him. His catch radius is ridiculous, and he's big, he's tough, he's sturdy. And I think, obviously Jim Harbaugh saw him, being in the Big Ten, had some wars against this kid, so he knows what he can do because he had the game plan for him. So I think that that's the pick at number 5 for the Los Angeles Chargers. They take Marvin Harrison. So here we go. At number 6, the New York Giants are on the clock. Some people were talking about maybe the Giants take a quarterback. Maybe they, maneuver some things around to trade up and get another quarterback. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think they're going to see if Daniel Jones can come back from the injury that he sustained last year and see if he can be their franchise quarterback, because just a year ago, they paid him franchise money to be that guy. So you've got to put more weapons around him to see if he can do it. They did lose a major weapon when Saquon Barkley, bolted and went to the Philadelphia Eagles, a divisional rival. That was a blow for the Giants. So now they've got to pick up the slack somehow. And they had some great free agent signings. I really like what they did in free agency. But now in this draft, they've got to get another home run threat, another playmaker. And for me, one of the best players in this draft as far as just being a dynamic player is Malik Neighbors. And it's eerily similar to me years ago when the Giants took another LSU product, an Odell Beckham Jr., and that worked out pretty well in the early stages of his career in New York. Took the league by storm. And I look at Malik Neighbors and I see that type of guy that could really, get the big apple behind him and get people excited about his playmaking ability. And the Giants need it in the worst way. So at number 6, I'm taking Malik Neighbors, wide receiver from LSU. All right. So once again, so far, this is what we have, and we can put it up on the board here. At number 1, we have Caleb Williams, quarterback from USC, going to Chicago. At number 2, LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels going to Washington with the Commanders. At number 3, North Carolina quarterback Drake May going to the New England Patriots. We have a trade at number 4 with the Minnesota Vikings moving into that position, and they're going to take J.J. McCarthy, quarterback from Michigan. At number 5, we just said Marvin Harrison, wide receiver from Ohio State, going to the LA Chargers. And at number 6, we have wide receiver Malik Neighbors from LSU going to the New York Giants. All right, so at number 7 on the board right now, we have the Tennessee Titans on the clock, and they're a team that, it might be time right now for rebuilds, and I don't like using that word, maybe retooling some things, and they've got to get tougher in the trenches. And I think for them, they've got a young quarterback now that they're investing into, and that's Will Levis, who just happens to be a former Nittany Lion. He did transfer to Kentucky, but we'll claim him first. But anyway, Will Levis is a young guy that's going to need some protection up front, and you've got to shore up your left tackle. And one of the best in the business in a long time, Joe Alt, is sitting there for them. He's a left tackle, a big mauler, but he's athletic as well, 6'8", 300-pounder from Notre Dame. And I think that's the ideal pick for the Tennessee Titans. So at number 7, the Tennessee Titans take Joe Alt, tackle from Notre Dame. All right. And now we're looking at the number 8 pick on the board. And here we go. At number 8, the Atlanta Falcons. And I think the Falcons, they have a new coach in Raheem Morris. He's a guy that's been around. I remember him in Washington, covering the team there when he was there. And now, He comes over from the Rams where he had a good stint as a defensive coordinator for the Rams. And what did the Falcons do? They've had a pretty good offseason as well with some free agent signings. They brought in Kirk Cousins, too, to be their franchise face at the moment and be their quarterback right now. So I think if you're Raheem Morris, you have to go to the other side of the ball. You need some more guys to wreak havoc on that side. And I think an edge rusher that's tailor-made for what he wants to do with the Falcons is Dallas Turner. So I'm taking Dallas Turner, edge rusher out of Alabama, a guy that tormented the SEC for the past couple years. And I think he's a guy that's really coming into his own even more so now that he could have a huge impact and come into the league and start right away and make some noise for the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm taking Dallas Turner if I'm the Atlanta Falcons. All right, so moving along now at number 9, the Chicago Bears are back on the clock. And remember, they had their own pick, which was the number 9 pick, and they just happened to have the number 1 pick because of a trade they did last year with the Carolina Panthers. So at number 9, if I'm Chicago and we already took, Caleb Williams at number 1, if you're a Bears fan, now you think about the offense that he's going to walk into. He's got some weapons there, Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. I mean, he's got some solid weapons on offense. So if I'm the Bears, I'm going to go to the other side of the ball as well. You can never have enough edge rushers. And last year, they traded a second-round pick to the Washington Commanders for Montez Sweat, and it worked out well. It worked out super well for Chicago. Montez Sweat led them in sacks, even though he came over in the trade, several games into the season. He still led them in sacks. So I think he needs a compliment on the other side. So I think if you have Montez Sweat on one side of the defensive line, on the other side, you can get Jared Verse. And I think Jared Verse is just a tad bit on my draft board under Dallas Turner. So I think if you can get Jared Verse, if you're the Chicago Bears at number 9, that would be a great, great move for them to complement Montez Sweat on the defensive line. And I think that puts Chicago in the conversation of a team that can compete in the NFC North. Naturally, Detroit's going to be probably the prohibitive favorite to win it, with Green Bay a slight second, if not battling Detroit. But I think Chicago could put themselves right there if they can get adequate play, from Caleb Williams and turn things loose on the defensive side of the ball. So Jared Verse from Florida State goes to the Chicago Bears at number 9. And then at number 10, in my top 10 predictions for this year's 2024 NFL draft, you have the New York Jets on the board, and we know Aaron Rodgers will be back. And last year, he got injured 3 plays into his Jets career, and it derailed the Jets season. They just didn't have any answers after that at the quarterback position. And now if he's back, you think about the offensive weapons that he has on the offensive side of the ball. Well, one thing that they didn't have was great tight end play. And I think if you're the Jets and you're a quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, look at what he did in Green Bay. He had some really good tight ends in Green Bay, and it made their offense explosive. So I think if you're the Jets, you think of your receivers, what you have there, you think of your young running back, Breece Hall. You have all these young weapons already, except at that tight end position. And one of the best tight end prospects in a long time is right there this year in Brock Bowers, tight end out of Georgia. And that's where I'm going if I'm the New York Jets. So at number 10, I'm taking Brock Bowers for the New York Jets. Whew, that was a mouthful, folks. So there you have it. I tried to, really go with what I think these teams need as far as the best player on the board for them, as well as the best need being filled. So I'm pretty confident in this top 10. We'll find out how that plays out next Thursday in Detroit. Like I said, I'll be in Detroit for some draft coverage. Excited about that. And we're going to see. You can write me on Sports Journey at Lake Lewis Jr. at sportsjourney.com. Let me know your thoughts, on this draft, on this top 10 picks. If they're right, if they're accurate, if you don't agree with them. I know there's some other great talented players out there. Rome Odunze, I literally considered at number 9 for Chicago to give Caleb Williams another weapon on the offense. But, you can never have enough edge rushers in the NFL. So that's why I went with Jared Verse in that position. I mean, you have so many other guys. You've got some great young cornerbacks as well. So this is going to be a draft that you can do some damage if you hit on your picks. And speaking of the Commanders, considering that's the team that I cover, they've got 6 picks in the top 100, and they have a chance to really do some damage in this draft if Adam Peters and company hit on the right prospects. So again, excited to see how all this stuff plays out, and we'll see how this shapes up next Thursday in Detroit, live from the NFL draft. So as always, I appreciate you from joining me. Remember, you can follow me on social media at Lake Lewis Jr. on pretty much all social media carriers. And you can subscribe to the podcast via all the major audio carriers. And you can go follow us and subscribe on YouTube under the Sports Journey channel and watch it on sportsjourney.com. Appreciate you joining me today. Whether it's your evening, whether it's your morning, I greatly appreciate your time. Good seeing you, my friends. Take care.